Watercress. The days had been long for Watercress. For the sake of the crusade, he had to guide the pitiful map reader F7 without hurting the man's self-esteem. He found it absurd that this boiled down to his responsibility, of all people, but he took it. Once, D4 specifically asked Watercress to trade a young lady who was badly bruised with a concussion. The master tried to engage in conversation with her, but she remained mute. In the evenings, when Watercress wasn't advising the Major General, he composed another spell tome for Basil. Along the route, he ran out of parchment until the group stopped in the Carey village. As was part of their custom, they would not take gem, so he traded a precious gold ring for their stores of treated hides. The pages would be thicker than if the base was made of a parchment bat's wing, but the appearance mattered little. It would relay the magic just as well. Watercress wrote the tome to create a barrier of health over an area as large as the city of Sithica. If Basil ever wanted to be employed in a large city, he would need to know it. If his apprentice attended the mage's college, Basil could gain the accreditation without knowing the spell, but he would have to impress the professors in all other regards. But Watercress couldn't possibly allow Basil to attend the mage's college. Surrounded by sorcerers, Basil would be recognized as a spawn in an instant, regardless of how hard he concentrated on his studies. Still, in all ways, Watercress had wanted to prepare his apprentice for any circumstance. Basil visited Watercress less frequently than he hoped, and while it secluded Watercress, he made excellent progress drafting his new text. When Basil did meet Watercress, Basil described the challenges he faced with his friends, how the removal of a brain tumor dramatically altered the personality of one of them, and how he was on his way to saving for his own future apprentice. Basil's phantom wings had changed. When they had previously taken on a lonely icicle, a fearful mist, or a concerned glass appearance in the city, they flourished into feathered wings. Based on wing theory, the type of feather signaled a different emotion, including motivated, joyful, enlightened, and amused. On occasion, his wings would take on a crazed electrical excitement, or spread into a cloud of blissful relaxation. Overall, the crusade had benefited his apprentice's emotional health. Although, one morning when Basil came to speak of how he defended his friend's honor in the night, through the course of his story of fighting against the unholy men, the feathers along his arms and legs turned to spires, his hands grew claws, his head wore horns, and his wings solidified into scythes. It was only for a moment, but Watercress didn't hide his reaction well. A display of Basil's fully impassioned wings was such an infrequent occurrence that Watercress hadn't practiced restraining his response. "What's the matter?" Basil's amber eyes met his, still in a fervor. "I've never seen you so distraught," Watercress said. "I was in disbelief." "Oh." His wings shifted into an ensnaring shade spider web of self-doubt. "It's fine, Basil. I'm sure you are having all sorts of new experiences here." Slowly, Basil regained his confidence during their discussion, and his wings turned to thick grass blades when Watercress mentioned the new spell tome. "Thank you, Master," he said. "I might be mistaken for a sorcerer one of these days because of your teachings." "There's nothing wrong with being a wizard, Basil. Be proud of yourself and your accomplishments. You've worked hard to get so far. You will make a fine teacher when you take on an apprentice." The grass blades emitted light. "I appreciate it. I'll make you proud. And Master, as soon as the crusade is over, I intend to enroll in the mage's college to complete my training." Watercress's heart sank. This was a long time coming. I need to change my approach. When we return to Sithica, I will tell Basil his truth. Watercress nodded. "Of course. You are of age, you are mentally mature enough, and you are competent. I would expect that you would excel far beyond your peers. I will need to explain a few cautions to you first, however." Light poured from Basil's wings. "I will gladly take any advice that you offer." "In your life, you will need to be wary of other mages," Watercress said initially. "I have tried my best to isolate them from you thus far. When encountering new people, it is best to concentrate on something about them. Focus on analyzing every bit of their appearance. Study their clothes, their jewelry, their accents. Discover their name. If they are a mage, you must be careful not to be too emotional around them. If they are not a mage, then you will be better off for it." "Why?" You've never spoken ill of Master Annis or Cirrus or Asmuth or any of the other mages. Has there been a change? A prophecy? Unfortunately, this is the only wisdom I can offer you for now, Watercress said. When we return to Sithika, I will tell you more. Bonith Runra. Basil cast the sound barrier. What can you not tell me? Does it relate to the words of the healing mages? Watercress noted how much better Basil had become at producing the barrier since they had left Sithika. He must have gained additional practice with the spell on the road. The mage's words of wisdom belong to all mages, not just to healers. To be honest, you already know its wisdom. Basil leaned closer. The secret of the mage's wisdom is the wizard's, that anyone can perform magic through studying the holy language and reading spell tomes. The mage's words were given to humankind from Asiel before anyone thought there was a need for discretion. The word's wisdom permeated through time and society, not a secret to anyone. For the exact phrasing of the words themselves, you will have to graduate from the mage's college before your professors will tell you. Basil frowned. You will be heading there after the crusade, will you not? That is not such a long time to wait. You have my every confidence that you will succeed in graduating. It will not be so long now. Basil gave his master a half-hearted smile before disbanding the sound barrier and leaving his company. They visited each other even less frequently after that meeting. Watercress found pleasant company within his mind to fill his loneliness. During the march, he planned how to finalize the spell tome. At the end of his days, he acted on his planning. The knights around him spoke about topics that interested him little, but occasionally he engaged to be polite. The transformation of the landscape between the kingdoms of Vetron and Ikasu was a blessing. The Shushwei Mountains had been perilously icy in the Kari region and dramatically slowed marching progress. After crossing the Ikasuish border, soft grasses and stone-cobbled paths led the way into their kingdom. Cedar and pine trees thrived on the border between the two kingdoms, but maples, cypresses, beeches, jacarandas, and poplars occupied the expanse before them. There would be a large variety of herbs Watercress could collect on his own, rather than pay for in market, and he would not let the opportunity to replenish their stock slip by. Water melted and rushed down the side of the mountains to form a river that ran parallel to the merchant road. The rushing stream's roar drowned the chirps from the birds it attracted and collected in an occasional offshoot lake while the main body continued to flow. The temperature inside the weather barrier was warmer by nearly 45 true degrees. Watercress immediately shed his layers, dripping with sweat in the new climate. The Major General recognized the need for readjustment, so he signaled for an H rank to blow the horn for the group to halt early for the midday meal and for the Crown's hires to change their dressings. Watercress eagerly switched from his fur coat back to his sapphire cotton robe. After he ate the meal, Watercress rearranged his travel bag in the back of Boss New's cart. It was fuller than usual, with military packs accompanying the typical civilian wares. Did we receive more soldiers? Boss New shook his head. No, Knox died last night in the cold. Poor soul, it was freezing out there. I know the man who had him. Kept great care of the beast. The creature was his livelihood after all. Shame, Watercress said, meaning it. Yea, but I've taken over some of his cart's provisions, along with the rest of the cart drivers. For now he rides with his brother. At least he has family to assist him, Watercress said. Aye, that he does. When it was time, Watercress returned to the front lines, surrounded by his cage of golden knights. His sweat-soiled tunic clung to his back, and he hoped he would acclimate soon. For the time being, he even removed his mage's robes and draped them over his forearm. One of the knights remarked about the master's peculiar choice, but he ignored him. It wasn't out of spite. He simply had something else preoccupying his mind. Watercress looked to the green and brown hues he had so desperately missed in the White Mountains. Patches of wildflowers popped up with striking yellows, purples, and oranges. He wanted to soak in the brisk air and the smell of wild grasses for the whole day, and he did. We should make much better time given the new terrain, F7 predicted. Good, D4 said. Let's find our way to the capital to join with Low Queen Amatrine's forces. The evening before the crusade arrived at Ikasu's first city, A phantom of a noble Strix perched on top of Watercress's tent. It could have been mistaken for an owl if it weren't as tall as a child. "This is farther south than you usually travel," Watercress greeted the archdemon indifferently. Dantrima glided down and morphed into his human form. He trekked into the dark grasslands of Ikasu's countryside. "So it is. A bit humid for my taste, but I did not venture across the globe for idle conversation." "What have you come for?" Watercress followed Dantrima away from the light of the campfires. "I expect you are not here to aid Cassire, Exon, and Mlau in blackening Basil's heart." Fontame's warning worried Watercress, but he was confident in the archangel's ability to protect Basil with her barriers until Watercress could help fight against them. Another archdemon joining their endeavor would be more difficult, especially one with erosion curses at his command. "I have no interest in the arcspawn. My intentions are personal, but the two are related." Relieved, then curious, Watercress tilted his head. "How so?" "The other archdemons are bullying me to get involved. I do not desire to intentionally inflict suffering upon the boy. Life will give him enough of that on its own. However, to force my hand, Mlau has given my summoning spell to a northern priest named Piety, who now resides in the White Dogwood Forest. Mlau also told Piety of the location of the last parliament of the noble Strix. Last I was aware, you were the only human to know of the parliament's location." "I didn't tell Mlau anything, if that's what you mean to imply," Watercress said. "He wants to torture Basil. I'm not assisting him." "I had been curious, but I'm not here to learn how he obtained that information either. I want to know Mlau's summoning spell so I can threaten him with it." "Why do you think I know his spell? He'd be a terror to summon." "You summoned me," Dantrima reminded. "You don't have the same reputation as Mlau. You're deliberate and observant. He's a charging beast." Dantrima laid a threatening hand on Watercress's shoulder. "I'm not stupid. I know you know it." Unfazed by the archdemon, Watercress said, "I will not tell you what his spell is, but I will lead you to it." "Tell me." Dantrima tightened his grasp. "His animal is a great eland. His personality is that of a brute. Your animal is a noble Strix. Your personality is that of an onlooker. Your sacrificial animal part is an eye. What would his be?" Watercress led Dantrima through the exercise like he would for Basil. "Do not patronize me." "This is how I discovered it. Now you can do it the same way," Watercress said. "You know him better than I do." "Horns or hooves, he's straightforward. Will ram you if you don't remove yourself from his path, but he also thinks himself superior and would step on those beneath him." "It's the horn," Watercress confirmed. "But I did try the hoof too." "His color is black, so I need a black flower," Dantrima said. "Yes, it can be a black-petaled flower, like the velvet petunia, or it can be a charred flower." "Next is the item of wisdom." "His words have to do with the architects. Therefore, his item will too." "What, is it a fucking brick?" Dantrima asked. "Consider who Mlau is. He's stubborn and cold, less refined." "A stone?" "Yes. Which?" After a heartbeat, Dantrima knew. "Obsidian." "Next is the bowl. As with summoning any demon, you'll need a silver bowl lined with the associated gemstones of their birthland." "He's from Rojet. It'll be emeralds." "And last is the sacrificial blood to be dripped into the fire while the assembled items blaze in the bowl," Watercress finished. "There, you learn Mlau's summoning spell on your own." "What are the words?" Dantrima asked. "The words?" "To the summoning spell." "They're the same as yours," Watercress simpered. "You just changed the name of the archdemon that you're praying to, and the names of the objects present in the bowl." Dantrima frowned, clearly annoyed with how obvious the answer was. "How did you figure all this out, originally?" Dantrima asked. "I read about it," Watercress said. "Where?" "The Mage's College Library." Dantrima leered over Watercress. "I found your noble Strix by reviewing a birdwatcher's notes. I found the other legendary creatures similarly, looking over migration patterns and learning when the population declined. I also read every account of those who knew the prior Archspawn in life. I learned where they went, when, and cross-referenced the dates and locations with the religious texts. The Archdemon seemed pleased with his answer, but his face was hard to read, despite its human appearance. I have another question for you before I go, Dantrima said. What is it? If you could learn Basil's summoning spell, would you summon him to leverage his abilities? Watercress had never considered the idea. It filled Watercress with pride and pity. Basil would make a fine archangel or archdemon, whichever he chose, but thinking of Basil's eventual death devastated him. I could never learn it, even if Basil dies before I do. He'll depart from this world until all those he is set to judge die. I will be included in that group, Watercress said. Hypothetically. I wouldn't seek out his spell. I could guess it, based on knowing him, but the spell also depends on the words of wisdom he blesses humanity with, and who he shares them with. The knowledge of mages has been passed down. I doubt there's an obvious second profession he'd choose, Watercress said. The master speculated on which words his apprentice would pick. Basil could choose wisdom for the slaves, even though Dantrima's words fulfill a similar niche with incarcerators. There was one other bit of information that Watercress knew, but was not common knowledge in society, related to the spawn. There's a decent chance Basil will choose those to be his words. Watercress continued, I would also have no use for additional magic after Basil dies. What about for yourself? Dantrima asked. You lied to all the kings and queens and lords and ladies of this land for rotations. No one will save you once it becomes known what Basil is. You will run for the rest of your life. I fear no one. If you're powerful enough to discount your leadership's future vengeance, how did the Rhyme Viaduct happen? My only focus had been on Basil's survival. He was clever enough, or lucky enough, on his own to not require my assistance. If he were in peril, I would have saved him, but I don't intend to show my cards before I need to. You've shown them to me, Dantrima said. I have told you little more than what you already knew. I care for my apprentice, and I will do whatever it takes to protect him. But if I truly showed my hand, then we'd be coming to the end of the facade soon.